Hello, we're live. Welcome, so glad you're here. Let me know if you can hear me and see me clearly. And also drop in the chat where you're watching from. Great. Michigan. What's the time in Michigan? That's early. Right. Today's live stream. What time is it here? It's 12:30. In the Netherlands. But today's live stream is a bit different. We're not going to talk about jumpsuits or set list or anything. We're going to talk about the man behind the music. Elvis Presley's Heart of Gold. I want to start with a video I made a while ago. It tells the story of Denise Sanchez, a young girl battling leukemia, and the unforgettable thing Elvis did for her and her family. And you also hear from Joe Mosho, who shared what Elvis was like on stage. Kind, thoughtful, and incredibly generous, even in the smallest moments. And let me know in the chat if you've heard this story before and how it makes you feel. All right. What happens? Here we go. What happens when an artist goes beyond the music to truly touch someone's life? Today, I'm sharing a deeply emotional story of how Elvis Presley made an unforgettable impact on an 8-year-old fan battling leukemia, and why his kindness continues to inspire us all. Hi everyone, welcome back to Hidden Minds, where we explore the untold and heartfelt stories behind Elvis Presley's life and legacy. Before we begin, I want to give a special thank you to someone who reached out to me via email. This person, who wishes to remain anonymous, shared these incredible stories and videos about Elvis's generosity. And their support has truly inspired today's video. Thank you, you know who you are. Our first story takes us back to 1972 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where Elvis met an 8-year-old girl named Denise Sanchez. Denise was fighting a brave battle with leukemia, a journey that had already cost her a leg and a part of her hip. Despite her struggles, Denise found hope and joy in Elvis's music. Her mother, determined to create a special moment for her, worked with the local newspaper to arrange something extraordinary. Tickets to Elvis's concert and a chance to meet him in person. When Elvis met Denise, he was deeply moved by her courage and strength. During his performance that night, he dedicated Love Me Tender to her and later sang You Gave Me a Mountain, a song that resonated with her family struggles. Although this moment was captured by photographers and even filmed by MGM's on-tour cameras, it didn't make the final cut of the documentary. Sadly, Denise passed away just a few months later, but her family will always treasure that evening, a testament to Elvis's kindness and compassion.
Leukemia coming out.
Grant, introduce the lady there. Tell them about it. Go in a little farther, will you?
Shot his back. This is possible.
Whichever one you want.
Alright.
Whichever one you want. Danny, no, look at him, look at him.
I'm not going to tell you which one I'm going to do, okay? What's your prize?
Special. What's your favorite song?
There you go. Okay.
Oh. Thank you so much, so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Calm down.
That story always gets me. The fact that Elvis could stop everything just to make a sick little girl feel loved. That's the Elvis I want people to remember. Denise's story is one of the many that reveal the depth of Elvis's heart. Joe Moscio, a member of Elvis's band, often spoke about the little moments that defined Elvis's kindness. In the interview titled A Short Story About Love, Joe recalled how Elvis always took time to help people. Whether it was lending an ear, offering advice, or making sure his friends and fans felt valued. These stories show a side of Elvis that goes beyond the stage and spotlight.
Yeah, I know we're talking about love songs, and which are obvious. You know, they're love songs to from a man to a woman, and it's about love and it's about passion. But Elvis took it further than that. I think in his mind, there are a lot of ways to express your love, and Elvis was very, very. He was very. When he loved and he was generous. He was very personal. If you'll notice, in if you saw, that's the way it is. Somebody was sick in the group, you know, and he came over to the girls and knelt down with them and asked about them. How's so and so doing, and how's she feeling, and is there anything I can do? He was so generous and so. He had such compassion and feelings for his. If it was a friend, if it was you know, one of the family members, you know how he was with his mother and his dad, how much he loved his mom and his dad. I mean, it was so obvious in everything that he did. But there's something that he did every year that I don't think a lot of people know about, and he never got any publicity on it because he didn't want it. But every year he took $100,000 at Christmas time. 100,000 is, you know, a lot of money, but to him it didn't seem like a lot of money, obviously. And he would have like an open house at his house at Graceland. And if you came up and had a good story, I mean, he'd write you a check. You know, I need $1,000 for. He'd write you a check for $1,000. I mean, it would be 1,000, or 5,000 to 10,000, and he gave to a lot of charities in Memphis. You know, to the Boys Club or to the whatever, and he just wrote out checks, $100,000 every year, and gave the money away. And people knew this, so they'd start lining up, and he'd write them a check. It was just unbelievable. And honestly, nobody knew that. But I mean, don't you think that's love? I mean, this is love for your fellow man. This is love, compassion, and it's a different kind of love. But he felt it, and he had it. And he was so generous with us guys. I mean, you can't believe what the gifts he gave us and how much he would come in and he'd hug your neck and show a side of him that you never knew. I mean, I gave him a Bible one time, and he hugged me, and he pushed his forehead against mine, and he said, "This means so much to me." He probably had 100 Bibles, you know. I think that is a part of the love and this love story that with Elvis that I think is so important. To prove that you know, how he cared for people, you know, I'm a friend, you know, on the periphery, really. But we were, this thing happened in Las Vegas probably in 1970. We were up in the suite after the second show when we were standing around the piano singing. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning. And one of the bodyguards comes up to me. Sonny came up and whispered in my ear and said, "Your wife is on the phone." I said, "Well, that's strange, 3 o'clock in the morning." But my wife and my family, my children, my 4 children and my wife were back in a motel that we lived in when we were in Las Vegas, which is way off campus from where Elvis lived in the hotel. So anyway, you know, we had a little apartment there, and the kids would go out in the summertime and enjoy Las Vegas in the summer. And so anyway, they were back in the hotel sleeping. But my wife called and said, "You need to come back because our house in Nashville has been broken into." Now, we're in Las Vegas. Our house in Nashville has been broken into. She's panicking. Imagine that they broke all the windows and stole everything. And so I didn't want to make a big scene because Elvis was there with his friends having a good time. And I told one of the guys, I said, "I need to go." So I snuck out the door, and I was standing at the elevator on the 30th floor at the penthouse. And there were 2 security guards there. And I was visiting with them while I was waiting for the elevator. And Elvis comes bursting out of his penthouse apartment there. and says, Mosqueo, where are you going? I said, I have to go. I got a little family problem. What's the matter? And by then, everybody that was in there is now out in the hallway, you know, and they're surrounding. And I just, you know, I got a little problem. What is it? Well, my house back in Nashville has been broken into, and I'm going to go. My wife is crying and upset, and so I'm going to go see what's wrong. He said, well, I'm going with you. He said, we're going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to take care of it for you. I said, no, it's okay. Really, Elvis, I mean, I got it covered. And the guys are panicking, you know, because Elvis now, he's looking for some adventure. And so he starts giving everybody orders. Get the plane ready. We're going to Nashville, and get my credentials and get my, you know, and everybody get my coat. And so pretty soon everybody's reacting. And before you know it, I go down the elevator, and there's 4 white limousines out there, and Elvis and all his entourage go in these limousines. I'm driving my little car that I had rented, you know, and I'm leading them to this little motel. It was embarrassing. I mean, really. And so my wife is in this little motel called the Valley High Motel in Las Vegas, if it could be any worse. And my kids are in another room sleeping. I thought they were sleeping. So we go down the alley behind the motel, and I showed them the way to go through like this little passageway, and we come around to our place, and I knock on the door. My wife answers. She's got her hair in rollers, you know, and she's got her bathrobe on, and she can't believe that all these people are here. I mean, there's an entourage. There's like 20 people. And so we all pile into this little motel room, living room, you know, cheap furniture. And I go, she can't believe, she's crying and very upset. Elvis hugs her. And he says, darling, don't worry, I'm here to take care of things. I mean, that's love, that's compassion. And he settles her down, and then he's telling Felton, who lived about a mile from me out there in the country in Franklin, Tennessee, he said, call the sheriff out there and find out what happened. Give us a report. So Felton, this was way before cell phones. So, you know, he's on the phone, a landline, and he's trying to get the sheriff to find out what happened, give him a report. Meanwhile, the kids hear all this ruckus in this room, and they open the door slightly, and they're like stacked up looking out the door from the bedroom at Elvis, and he sees them. He goes in there with them, and I wish you could have seen him that night. It was unbelievable. He had on this leather coat with fur cuffs, and a fur collar, and of course his sunglasses and his big belt and a flashlight about 3 feet long. He had all this, you know, stuff, but it was Elvis, you know. And the kids saw him, they just couldn't believe it. Well, he saw them and went into their bedroom and sat on the bed with these kids. And he started talking to them. And he said, look, I know you know, we're here because your house in Tennessee has been broken into. And he said, I just want to tell you, if they took your bicycles or any of your toys or anything that you loved and you know that was really your favorite, you let me know. Write me a note. Let me know. And he said, I'll replace it better than what you had. I promise you that. And okay. And he said, okay. And yeah, they said, okay. And he patted them or whatever. And they, you know, he just left them in the bedroom. They still talk about it. Now, you know, the kids are in their 40s and 50s, and they're still talking about Elvis coming into their bedroom that night. To me, that's love. I mean, that's the real deal. And that's what love songs are about. It's about touching people, touching hearts, and making an impression, a lasting, lifelong impression on people. That's a love song.
Elvis didn't just support his fans, he also helped fellow artists. One notable example is Dionne Warwick. Early in her career, Elvis gave her advice and encouragement, helping to shape her journey in the music industry. Elvis had a way in lifting others up, whether they were struggling artists or strangers he just met. His generosity wasn't limited to grand gestures, it was in a way he treated people, making everyone around him feel seen and valued.
While we're name dropping, Elvis Presley did you a big favour once in Vegas.
Oh, did he ever? You know, I was opening at the Sands Hotel, and he was reopening the International Hotel, the Hilton now. And I went to his rehearsal. My aunt, Sissy Houston, was part of a group called the Sweet Inspiration. They were doing background work for him on his tour. And I just fell in love with this man. I said, my God, I got to meet him. I got to meet him. And Sissy said, okay, I'll introduce you to him. So I went to the rehearsal, and he was such a nice young man to me. I told him I was opening at the Sands. He says, yeah, but we were opening the same night. I said, okay. And he says, well, I'm gonna do something for you that I think you might like. I said, okay, wonderful. He put his photograph in every single album in every record store in Las Vegas for me. I sold more albums because he made the announcement from the stage that if you buy a Dionne Warwick recording, you'll have a photograph of me. I could not believe he did that, but he did.
Did you ever sing with him?
No, I never had the opportunity to do that. But I became friends with him because, funny story, we were in a jewelry store where he shopped, and I did too. It was Christmas time, and they usually closed the store for him to come in and do his shopping. I happened to be in the store when he walked in, so they locked me in with him. Which is okay with me. Anyway, we started talking, and he says, you know, I'm certain you have a wonderful throat doctor. My daughter Lisa has got to have her tonsils out. Do you know of a good... I said, yeah, my doctor. He did both of my boys, and I'm sure he'd be able to do Lisa. And he never forgot that. And Lisa never did either. She says, it's because you aren't having tonsils. Okay.
These stories remind us that greatness isn't just about talent. It's about kindness and the way we make others feel. Do you know more stories like these about Elvis's generosity? Share them in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And if this video moved you, please like, subscribe and share it with someone who would appreciate the human side of Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley gave us timeless music, but he also left us with lessons in compassion and generosity. Thank you for watching today's video, and I hope you'll join me next time as we uncover more incredible stories about his life and legacy. See you soon. So, I'm curious, what stood out to you the most in this whole video? Drop your thoughts in the chat. For me, it was the little girl. That always gets me. Yeah, Joe's story is amazing. I always love those stories from people close to him. So, the next video zooms out a little. It looks at the bigger picture of Elvis's generosity. From giving away Cadillacs to donating $100,000 every Christmas to support St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Elvis gave quietly without needing recognition. Let's see that video. I'm diving into the life of Elvis Presley to uncover all the incredible ways he showed his heart of gold. You know him as the king of rock and roll, but today I'm showing you another side of Elvis, his extraordinary generosity. Sorry for the AI voiceover back then.
When we think of Elvis Presley, we often think about the hits: Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, Suspicious Minds, the music that defined a generation. But Elvis was more than a performer. Beneath the glitz and glamour was a man who gave back in ways most people never knew about. From lavish gifts to quiet, personal acts of kindness, Elvis's generosity touched countless lives. Whether it was his family, his friends, or even strangers, he always found joy in sharing his wealth. Today, we'll explore these moments that show Elvis wasn't just the king of rock and roll. He was the king of giving, too. Many people think of celebrities as living in a world disconnected from the struggles of everyday life. They see fame, wealth, and extravagant lifestyles. And it's easy to imagine that stars have lost touch with where they came from. But Elvis Presley stood in stark contrast to this image. Raised in the poverty-stricken town of Tupelo, Mississippi, Elvis grew up with very little. His family lived paycheck to paycheck, sometimes struggling to make ends meet. These humble beginnings left a lasting mark on him. Even as he rose to unprecedented fame, Elvis never forgot what it was like to struggle. He often said that he could never get rich enough to forget being poor. This connection to his past fueled a deep desire to give back, both to those he loved and to complete strangers. One of the most well-known examples of Elvis's generosity was his love for giving away Cadillacs. It's been said that over the years, Elvis gifted about 200 Cadillacs to people. Friends, family, or even people he had just met could suddenly find themselves being handed the keys to a brand new car, courtesy of Elvis. In one famous story, Elvis walked into a Cadillac dealership in Memphis to buy a car for himself. As he was leaving, he overheard a woman admiring a Cadillac on the lot. Without missing a beat, Elvis bought it for her, right on the spot. For him, seeing the joy in people's faces when they received such an unexpected gift was worth far more than the cost of the car. But Elvis's generosity went beyond material things. He often gave large sums of money to charity, particularly around Christmas time. Each holiday season, Elvis donated around $100,000 to various causes. But many of his donations were quiet and behind the scenes, with few people knowing the full extent of his charitable contributions. Deeper dive into specific causes. One cause that was particularly close to Elvis's heart was St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis. This hospital, founded by entertainer Danny Thomas, focused on treating and curing childhood diseases like cancer. From the moment Danny Thomas began fundraising for the hospital, Elvis was a major supporter. One of his most generous acts for St. Jude was donating the yacht Potomac, which had once belonged to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Elvis had bought the yacht for $55,000 and turned around to give it to Danny Thomas to auction off for the hospital's benefit. The yacht sold for $75,000, and all of it went to help the children being treated at St. Jude. This wasn't just a one-time gesture. Elvis continued to support the hospital throughout his life. Even though he didn't always make a big show of it, his contributions had a lasting impact. And to this day, Elvis is remembered at St. Jude for his unwavering support. And for Elvis, it wasn't just about donating money. It was about making a real difference in the lives of sick children who needed hope. While Elvis was known for his large donations, some of his most touching acts of kindness came in smaller, more personal moments. There's a story of a disabled woman who desperately needed a new wheelchair. Rather than sending someone to handle it for him, Elvis personally delivered a brand new wheelchair to her. That's the kind of man he was. Someone who wanted to directly impact the lives of others, not just write a check from afar. And his generosity wasn't limited to people in need. He was just as giving to those close to him. Elvis took great joy in helping his friends and family. He bought homes, cars, and even paid for weddings. For instance, when his longtime friend George Klein got married, Elvis didn't just attend the wedding. He paid for everything. The venue, the catering, even first-class flights for guests, all covered by Elvis. He loved being able to surprise the people he cared about with these gestures. And for him, it was a way to share his good fortune with those who had been there for him. One of the most powerful examples of Elvis's generosity was when he funded the entire wedding of his close friend Joe Esposito. Joe had been one of Elvis's most trusted confidants, and when it came time for him to get married, Elvis went all out. He covered every expense, from the lavish ceremony to the reception, even arranging first-class flights for all the guests. But Elvis didn't stop there. He also gifted Joe and his wife a brand new car as a wedding present. For Elvis, these moments weren't about showing off. They were about sharing in the happiness of the people he loved. Elvis also had a deep emotional connection with giving. He once said that fame and fortune meant nothing if you couldn't share it with others. He often remarked that his greatest joy came from the look in people's eyes when he surprised them with a gift. That's why he gave so freely. Not for the recognition, but for the sheer joy of making someone else's life better, even if just for a moment. For Elvis, giving was a way to connect with people on a deeper level, to show them that despite his fame, he was still the same generous man he had always been. Elvis Presley's legacy isn't just about the music. He was a man who understood the value of giving, and his acts of kindness touched countless lives. Whether through large donations to charities or personal gifts to friends and strangers, Elvis's heart was as big as his fame.
Do you have a favorite Elvis story? Share it with me in the comments. And don't forget to check out my other videos, where I explore more about Elvis. Right. Now I want to share a story. Now I want to share a story that was actually sent by me to me by April. So I want to thank her for this story. It's about Bobby Pietrafeso. I don't know if I pronounce it right. Does anyone know that story? It's a police officer in Denver who became friends with Elvis in the 1970s. The story goes that one night Bobby gets a phone call at work. And there was a guy on the phone who says he's Elvis. It turns out it was. Elvis invites him over to the hotel. They hang out, watch football. They talked, joke around. And then they all head out back of the hotel to avoid the crowd. As they walk through the parking lot, Elvis stops under a street light and points to a shiny black Dodge Power Wagon. Elvis put his arm around Bobby and says, "Nice truck, huh?" Then he hands Bobby the keys and says, "It's yours." Bobby thought it was a joke, but when he saw his name already printed on the temporary license tag, he broke down. He hugged Elvis tight, and Elvis just laughed, because he loved giving like that. So, let's jump on to that video.
Don't forget. Don't forget telling a story about your truck.
My truck?
Yeah.
Okay. It was January 27th, actually, because I got the check the next night, January 27th, 1976. I'm at work, I was assigned to Drug Enforcement Administration at the time in downtown Denver. Our office was in the post office building downtown. We had the top floor of the post office. That was DEA's task force office, and then the regular drug enforcement was in the customs house across the street. So I'm at work. It's nearing 5 o'clock. I didn't have much going on that day or that night, and it was nearing 5 o'clock, and the phone rings. My receptionist, her name was Wendy, cute little gal, and there's a story to go along with that too. It's so funny, and I'll get to that. But Wendy answers the phone, puts it on hold. She says, "Bobby, some guy on the phone says he's Elvis." I said, "Oh, okay." So I pick up the phone, and it was Elvis. He was here at Stouffer's. He was staying at the Stouffer's. Remember when Stouffer's was at Quebec and Martin Luther King Boulevard?
That was a great hotel.
Yeah, right at the corner, right? And that's where he was staying. And he was here for, you remember when Gene Kennedy committed suicide?
Yeah, Jerry's brother.
Gene was Jerry's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elvis and his entourage came here for the funeral.
So he came back from, he was here in Vail.
Right.
Then he left.
And he came back, and well, it was 2 weeks after he bought all the cars for everybody. 2 weeks after that is when he came back for the funeral. So he calls me at work, and Wendy says, "This guy says he's Elvis." I said, "Oh, okay, thank you." So I pick up the phone. It's him. He says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Just getting ready to leave." He said, "Listen, can you stop by the motel on your way home?" I said, "Yeah, that's fine, you know." So I hang up, and the secretary, Wendy, she says, "Who was that?" I said, "Wendy, it was Elvis." She goes, "What?" She was a real Elvis fan,
right.
An avid fan. She started screaming and carrying on. "Oh my God, I talked to him on the phone. Oh my God." She went nuts. She went nuts, this little gal. So anyway, I leave. And I go to Stouffer's. I go upstairs, he had 2 adjoining rooms. Go upstairs. Chief Dill was there. Remember Art Dill?
Yeah.
May he rest in peace. But
Yeah. Great guy.
he was just leaving. He had stopped by to see him a little bit earlier, and he was just leaving. And I got there, and Elvis was in his bathrobe. He had just gotten out of the shower, and we were just kind of milling around. There was a football game on, in the other room, and he used to love, whenever I'd see him, he'd say to me, "I got this new move to show you," because
yeah, the karate.
His karate, martial arts. The guy was good. Did you ever see him do any kind of an exhibition? Oh my God! You talk about fast. This guy had hands that was just unbelievable. So he says, "Red, come over here, Red West."
Yeah.
He said, "Come over here," and you could just see Red. His eyes would go back like, "Oh, here we go again," He'd say, "Now watch this, Bobby." He said, "You can use this one out on the streets," And I mean, boom, 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 and within like 5 seconds, he had Red West on his back, on the floor. And I don't know how many times he had hit him before he put him down on the ground.
Wow.
It was just amazing to watch this guy. But anyway, we were just kind of, doing that, talking, shooting the shit and stuff. And a little while later, my brother Ron shows up, and we're watching the football game, and Elvis says, and the reason, well, I'll get to that in a minute. We're watching the football game, and pretty soon Elvis stands up and he says to Ron, he said, "Hey Ron, come here for just a minute." And they go in the other room. So pretty soon they come back in, and Ron says, "Look," he said, I got to go meet one of my informants." He says, "But I'll be right back." I said, "Well, Ron, I'm probably going to be gone." I said, "I got a big day tomorrow. I got to go to court and this and that." He said, "Well, just do me a favor." He said, "I won't be gone long. Just wait till I get back." He said, "I need you to help me drive these guys over to the Kennedy house." He said, "And then you can just go home from there." Because he was going to go pay his respects to the Kennedy family, because of the death of Gene. So I said, "Yeah, all right, but just hurry up, please." So I don't know. He was probably gone not all that long. Probably an hour, maybe a little bit more. And he comes back. And by that time, Elvis was all dressed and everything and ready to go. So we take him out. We go down the back, the fire escape, because there were people up in the lobby. Word had gotten out that he was there, and people were up there trying to get up to see him and stuff. So we took him down through the back way. And shoot, it had to be 11 o'clock at night. We're walking through the parking lot at Stouffer's, the back parking lot, and I'm on Elvis's right side, Ron's on his left side, and everybody else was just kind of in a circle around him as we're walking. So we're walking, pretty soon he stops. And I turn around, I look over my shoulder because I heard some people behind us and I wanted to make sure they weren't coming up. And when I turned back around, we're standing underneath this big parking lot light, the lights they have on parking lots. And below this light was this brand new black Dodge Power Wagon sitting underneath that light, just glistening. It was really beautiful. And Elvis goes, "Wow, that's a nice truck." I said, "Yeah, that's beautiful." He put his arm around my shoulder, because I was on his right side, put his right arm around my shoulder, and he had the keys in his hand, and he said, "Well, it's yours." I said, "What?" And everybody's laughing, because everybody knew what was going on except me. I was the only one that didn't know. And everybody's laughing, and I look at my brother, and he's laughing. I said, "Ron, he's kidding, isn't he?" He said, "No, he's not kidding." And I turned around, and I mean, my legs felt like rubber. I turned around, I put a bear hug on him, and I was hugging him and thanking him, and he's laughing. He got the biggest charge out of that. He loved doing stuff like that. So, but before that point, I said, "No," I said, "You're kidding." He grabs a flashlight. One of the guys was carrying a flashlight. He grabs his flashlight, takes me over, and do you remember back then, on the temporary permits they put on new cars, it had the new owner's name and address on the temporary permits. He shines his flashlight on the temporary permit, and my name and address is on the temporary permit. And that's when I freaked. That's when I turned around and I threw my arms around him, and he's laughing, and he got the biggest charge out of it, surprising people like that, Well, it turns out, backing up, when we were in there watching the football game, and he got up and asked Ron to go in the other room, when they got in there, he says to Ron, he said, "You know what?" He said, "Your brother missed out a couple of weeks ago when I was here." He said, "I want to buy him a car." He said, "What do you think he would like?" Ron says, "Oh, you don't have to do that. He doesn't expect that, He says, "I know he doesn't expect it." He said, "But I like him. I want to buy him one. What do you think he'd want?" Well, back then, I really wanted a new Dodge Power Wagon 4-wheel drive pickup. But, they were expensive. And when I tell you what this truck cost, you're going to laugh. But they were expensive. And I was, at that time, I had a family of 5 at that time, trying to raise them on a policeman's income, which was chicken feed back then,
That's an amazing story, wireless customer. Thank you for sharing.
There's no way I could afford a truck like that. So Ron said to him, he said, "If you insist on doing it," he says, he always talks about a new Dodge truck, he said, how he wishes he could afford one. He said, "We'll go out and find him one." Well, when he said that to Ron, that had to be like 9 o'clock at night. Dealerships close at 9 o'clock. Ron says to him, he said, "It's 9 o'clock. Where am I going to find?" He said, "You'll find one." And that's just the way it was. And you know that from the Black Diamond deal. When he wanted something, he was so spontaneous, it had to be right now.
Right.
He tells Ron, "You'll find one." So Ron leaves, calls Skeet Antonio.
Skeet Antonio, yeah.
Remember Skeet? Yeah. Calls Skeet, who was the general sales manager at Jack Kent Cadillac. And Skeet had just gone through this 2 weeks earlier with all the Cadillacs. Okay? So Ron says to Skeet, he said, "Skeet, Elvis is in town. I need a Dodge truck." And there you go. There's Ron, Elvis, Skeet, and Mrs. Kemp. That's Jack Kemp's wife in the middle.
There they are.
And so he says,
"Yeah, you can always pile out. Here's proof."
Yeah. He tells Ron, "You'll find one." So Ron calls Skeet, says, "Skeet, I need a Dodge truck. Do you know anybody?" Skeet says, "I just happen to know the general manager at Skyline Dodge. Remember Skyline Dodge?
Sure.
It was on Colorado Boulevard.
Yeah.
He said, let me call him.
Nice to see you too.
His name was Dick Otto. Nicest guy in the world. Keith calls him, says, Dick, Elvis is in town. I need a Dodge truck. Can you help us out? He said, no problem. I'll meet you over at the dealership.
Nice.
So he met Ron and Skeet and those guys over at the dealership. They walk in, he turns on the lights, and my truck is sitting on the showroom. Had the nice big tires and wheels, and you know, it's just. Ron said, that's it. He said, we don't need to go any further. He said, that's the truck right there. He said, but I need to add a few things to it. Dick said, that's not a problem. He said, I'll just fill out what they called a WEO.
Yeah.
He said, tell me what you want. He says, you can take the truck tonight. He said, and then just, because they told him what the story was, he said, and just have your brother bring it back. He said, and we'll add. So Ron said, I want a tonneau cover, it needs air conditioning, it needs this, it needs a roll bar, it needs this, it needs that. So he's writing all this stuff down, and they take the truck. They take the truck. Come back to Stouffer's, park it under that light, come upstairs, and then I told you the story from there. So.
God, that's so good.
That's a great story. So let me know in the chat. What would you do if someone just handed you the keys to a brand new Dodge truck? Let me know. I have another story from J.D. Sumner, of course, who worked with Elvis for years. He gets a call from Elvis. My plane's already on the way. You're coming to Denver to sing at a funeral. Elvis didn't want to draw attention to himself, so he showed up in a specially made police uniform just to pay his respects. He paid for the funeral and brought JD and the Stamps Quartet to sing. And afterwards, he told JD, let's get something to eat. Now, here's the funny part. JD had just eaten, but when Elvis said, let's eat, you went. They go to a fancy restaurant in Denver. JD orders lobster and steak. And Elvis, he ordered an $18 peanut butter and jelly sandwich because that's what he loved. While they ate a news anchor mentioned in on air that Elvis had now giving away 12 Cadillacs. Well, I just let hear the video, the interview.
I was in Tucson, Arizona, singing at a little Baptist church. Got a telephone call from Elvis. He traced me down through calling my wife at home and finding out where I was at. He traced me down and wanted me and the Stamps Quartet to come to Denver to sing at a funeral. And, of course, we had dates every night, so he said, my Jetstar is on the way to pick you up. There wasn't any question of whether I was going or not. The plane was already on the way. So, at that time, I had a boy singing bass by the name of Larry Strickland. So I left Larry with the bus to drive it to the next date over in New Mexico. The Stamps Quartet got on the plane. We went to Denver. We sang at the funeral. After the funeral was over, of course, Elvis came to the funeral dressed as a policeman. He had a police uniform on. He and Linda came to the funeral, and Elvis was supposedly a policeman. After the funeral was over, Elvis said, I want you to stay with me. Well, when he wanted you to do something, you did it. I stayed with him. And the quartet was sent back to finish filling the dates that needed to be done on that tour. I waited in my room, as you always did, for to see what Elvis, what he wanted, or if he wanted anything, or whatever. I just waited in the room until I was almost starving to death, so I decided I was going down to the coffee shop and have supper. I went down and had supper, eat as fast as I could, come back up, and as I was approaching my room, I heard a telephone ringing. I run, unlocked the door, and sure enough, it was my phone ringing, and it was Elvis. Elvis said, let's go and eat. I said, well, it just so happens I have just come from the coffee shop, Elvis. I have just eaten. He said, I don't care what you've done. I said, let's go and eat. I said, I had no idea I was that hungry. But,
still hungry.
I am starving to death. Let's go. We went to a restaurant, which I can't name the restaurant, in Denver. Of course, the limousine was ready when we got downstairs. And we went to a restaurant to eat. He also had on a police uniform. We went out and eat, and while we were eating, of course, he took his cap off at the table, because that's the way he was raised. And what I ordered was lobster and steak, because there wasn't that much lobster and steak to what I could get it down some way without it looking bad. So, but what Elvis ordered was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it cost $18. And while we were eating, a man came over to Elvis and said, pardon me, sir, but you can settle an argument between the wife and I. Said, are you him? Now, who was him? He didn't say, are you Elvis? He said, are you him? Elvis said, no. And he said, well, you certainly look like him. Elvis said, well, I've been told that a lot of times. That was the only way that he was bothered during the meal. We got through and came on home after this stay in Denver. Of course, during this stay, Elvis was in a giving away Cadillac mood, is what I call it. He had given away Cadillacs to the police department, to different policemen in Denver. And we were watching the news in his suite, and the little guy that was the anchor man for the news said, well, our friend Elvis is still at it. He has now given away a total of 12 Cadillacs. And he said, by the way, Elvis, when you get mine, I want a black sedan Seville. And Elvis said, give me the phone. And I said, my God, what's the man going to do? So he called the Cadillac man and said, I want a black sedan Seville at the TV station by the time this guy gets off the air. The Cadillac man got the Cadillac to the TV station. When he came off the air, they had the cameras and all ready. They took him on the outside, and the Cadillac was there waiting for him, the one that he had asked for just a few minutes before. Well, what was Elvis Presley doing? He was producing his own television show from the hotel. And I was sitting there saying, my God, why in the name of God don't he give me that Cadillac? Because I was driving a Pinto at the time. But that's the way that he enjoyed life. But we came on home. Elvis, apparently when he was a young boy, well, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches was his favorite. So he woke up one afternoon and at Graceland, and he wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at this restaurant. He called his pilot, Milo, and got the crew together, got on the Lisa Marie, the big airplane, flew to Denver, I know personally I seen the receipt for the fuel. It cost $8,000 to fly the Lisa Marie from Memphis to Denver. He got on the plane, flew to Denver, got him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and flew back to Graceland. That peanut butter and jelly sandwich cost him $16,018. And I would have personally made him an arm load and walked him over to Memphis from Nashville here for $100.
So, who already know this story of JD? I know, Cameron. It's do you speak Dutch? Spreek jij Nederlands? It's almost Dutch, African. Afrikaans, ja. Zeker een mooie taal. Grappig. So Cameron is on here. No worries, Rick. Hi. That's what I wanted to say. Cameron is on. He always going live with Rick from Elvis A to Z. Please subscribe to his channel. He's on here now too. Glad to have you here. But I'm Dutch, and Cameron is from Africa, South Africa, I think. And the language is also Dutch. It's really great. So this is basically my first real long live session. I'm not used to it, but I hope to get used to it someday. Yeah. Let's bring me to the end now. And I promise to join Rick and Cam with how's it called, into the studio, inside the studio. I would love that. Yeah, the Blue Moon Goof and the Blue Moon Dude. What's the time now? Yeah, it's the same as here, or not, Cam? It is fun. But I'm nervous as, as hell. I will send an email to Rick or so. I'll be honored. Thanks, Satnan. I don't know. I guess it's just new, Cam. So, yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining in today. I'm planning to do this more often. And yeah. So what I said, this was the regular live stream or so. This was, I want to show the heart of Elvis, and I want to show that people can remember Elvis as someone who gave so much of himself. And if you know other beautiful stories like these, then please drop them in the comments. And of course, if this stream meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and share it with everyone. So let's keep Elvis' legacy alive, not just through music, but through the man he was. So thank you everyone, and I'll see you as always in the next video. Bye everyone.